Hello, this is Lee Cooper. This is my Module 16 case study, Parental Apathy, EDL 856. Category 1, Problem Identification and Analysis. So, what do we know? Well, we know that there's low participation among parents. We know that there's a complacent principal. He doesn't believe in the PTO or the PTA. He doesn't want it to happen. He also says that he knew that if he put a lot of effort trying to get involved, the consequences would be negative, making the situation worse. He knew this. There's obviously poor communication channels. The only communication was a letter home to parents as well as the direct phone calls. There's some parent participation, which is great. 8 parents did show up, even though there was a terrible way to get the word out, and it wasn't very enticing. And we also know that there was participation because of those past groups. The biggest thing that we know is that we need to know more. So what is it that we need to know? Well, I would say that we need to do a full sociological inventory, just like we had to do in one of our assignments. We need to take a full inventory of issues of time, labor, and money, the customs, traditions of the populations and the characteristics, the communication groups and leadership, the economic and political structures. We need to know social tensions and previous community efforts, and we also need to know about the community and the diversity within the community. So, what else do we need to know? Well, I would like to definitely know some more information about those past parent groups. How did they start? What were they all about? Why did they end? I also would really like to know why those 8 parents did show up. What can we learn from them? And what are the parent interests? I think that's a really key point. So first, starting with those parents, what is it that we can learn from them? And then the parent interests. So what's the things that they are interested in? What would make them want to go to a meeting? And what are the things that are barriers for them going to a meeting? Whether that's socioeconomical, what have you. Maybe it's a language barrier. What are the barriers that are causing us to not be able to have that parent communication and determining of their interests? And lastly, how can we take ownership of the communication breakdown that's happened so far, and how can we take ownership of building in that new communication? So what's the problem? Well, there's obviously complacent administration, with that principal thinking that, well, things are just great how they are, we don't need to change anything, and if we try to change anything, well, it's not going to matter anyway. There's obviously laughable communication, so a letter home with a single time and not a very good time at that really doesn't do a whole lot. As well as no one knows the why. It's not clear that everyone knows why it's important to have school-community relations. That is not being expressed here at all among parents, principal, everyone. So among the parents, among the principal, as well as among the teaching staff, they don't seem to know why it's important to have school-community relations, which is something that I'm going to address. There's obviously, again, an extreme lack of information as well. That's a problem for somebody that's trying to figure this out. They need to do that sociological inventory to figure out what is going on. Okay, so proposed plan of action and strategies for implementation. First plan of action is we need to figure out why. So again, engage those 8 parents and use them as building blocks for creating this parent relationship, this school community relationship. Again, gather information, so do a sociological inventory. Now, that could mean just doing research, and depending on if you need to get more information or more specific information, making phone calls, going and meeting people, those kinds of things, so that needs to happen. Communicate the why. So, here is the why. Increased parent involvement is directly linked to student success. Everyone needs to know this. The principal needs to know this. The assistant principal needs to internalize this. The parents need to know this. They need to know why is it important that they have this relationship. Parents can also understand that this is a great way for them to discover resources. Depending on the community that we're in, maybe they're in need of something, and this is a great way to get them connected. As part of that why, so that the increased parent involvement is directly linked to student success, if we can make our students be successful, then we can continue to build a positive school relationship. We can continue to have a school community relationship that grows and grows and becomes more positive. So that's another reason why everyone should be on board. And lastly, the biggest thing I think here to make all this happen is we need to develop communication channels. We need to figure out how are we going to get messages across effectively, and by what means? What are we going to need to do? We're going to need to figure out those communication channels. All right, so some further steps with this action plan. Something that's clearly missing and that needs to happen is some kind of collaborative action plan, some kind of collaborative goals that we can work towards. And I think that something to keep in mind to help guide those goals would be that students with involved parents or caregivers earn higher grades and test scores, have better social skills, and show improved behavior. So, keeping that quote in mind, while also keeping in mind, what is it that it's already there? How can we integrate the useful parts of the existing culture, and how can we honor the culture that is there? So whatever that may be, how is it that we are going to integrate that into those goals, into that action plan? And then this is a quote that has kind of stuck with me, something that was in one of our materials, that direction, not intention, determines destination. So where is it that we are heading? Lastly, again, develop a vision plan with the principal. It's clear that there's not a great relationship there, that the principal doesn't seem to be very on board. So how can we collaborate and develop a vision plan with the principal? Okay, so the implementation strategy, let's take a quick look at that. So the big part, plan better events. I think part of how you're going to be able to plan better events is through a communication survey that's going to include the why. So the one that was given here, there will be a special meeting at the school a week from this coming Monday at 7:30 on parent involvement. If you're interested and can attend, please come to the auditorium. That gives you really no information. Like, a parent wouldn't know, like, what is going on here. That's so vague, and it's not enticing at all. There's no reason that the parent would want to go there. So include that why. Include why it's important to have that school-community relationship. The other part of that, too, is when you're doing a communication survey, I think that sending things home with students is fine, but include the note home should say, how is it that I can get in touch with you best? Do you prefer email, phone call? Do you prefer in person? How is it that I can talk to you the best? And then the next part of that would be, maybe there's like some kind of a language barrier. So include that, like, are you an English proficient person? And make sure that you are being able to communicate with all of your parents, if that's the case. Now, when you get those surveys back, you take that information and then you can figure out, okay, how is it that I'm going to best be able to plan an event based on what the information that I got. And if something doesn't come back, let's say that you make it like, hey, bring this home to your parent, you need to bring it back signed by tomorrow, so you're collaborating with teachers to make sure that that happens. And if, let's say that a student doesn't bring something back, well, then you just go ahead and start making some phone calls. So that's huge. Make sure that you get that stuff back. And again, if you don't get anything back, make those phone calls individually and try to figure out how is it that we can best communicate with you, and then work from there. All right, so the next part, collaborate with the 8 people that did show up. You got 8 people to show up, which is awesome. So use that, talk to them, why did they show up, and how can we move forward from there? Another big part would be to have some food. So part of a good event, I think, and especially if you're doing it at 7:30, is maybe you make it a dinner idea. So an idea where maybe you are providing the food, or you could even do it some kind of a potluck. People can get really involved in those type of potluck things and have a lot of ownership and a lot of care with wanting to do that. So it really brings people together. So I think breaking bread is a great way to build a community. The next part would be, once you've figured out those good levels of communication, to survey parents. You're going to need to do that in person, through email or mail, whatever the best way that they wanted to get communicated with, and if necessary, door to door. So I know this is something that our school does, and this would really kind of depend on your school, but if you can communicate the why well, let's say to your teachers, to your principal, to the staff, hopefully you can get some buy-in that people would want to go door to door to try to get more information from parents, to try to figure out what is it that, what's going on here? Like, how can we best serve you? And that really, I think that door to door thing too, I think shows parents that's like, wow, this staff, this administration is really invested in our students. And then lastly, maybe some incentives. So why is it that parents are going to fill out this survey? Maybe provide some incentive. And again, that could go back to, in the event, you have some food, those kinds of things, and it's like, cool, we want to go to this. And, at these events, maybe you're giving a survey. And then the parents that aren't going to these things, right, that you're getting that survey through these other means, And through all of it, though, have some kind of incentivization, and that could be swag of any kind, like maybe some kind of school swag, like a water bottle, or like a t-shirt, something like that. Whatever might fit into a budget. Now, I get that that might be complicated, but how is it that we can incentivize? All right, so let's take a look at some next steps for implementation. After you've gathered information, it's really important to analyze the data and adjust. So what kind of things do we need to take into consideration? Those things being, the broader community and the parents. What is it, again, what are those obstacles? What are the things that we are great that we can pull together? And again, it's because it's so vague, we don't really know. And so we're going to have to, after we gather the information, we're going to have to put all things considered and adjust our plans from there and see what is it that we really need to do to make this communication, to make this the school community relation happen. So again, thinking about those questions, how can we serve? How can we be connectors? A key here of analyzing and adjusting is to still keep a vision on your main goals. The main goals being that we need to communicate the why, so it's all about student success. That parent involvement is directly linked to student success. And then also, how are we building our communication channels? What is it that we found out is the best way to communicate, and how are we going to maximize that and utilize it in the best way to where we can have great communication? Again, we're going to make adjustments as needed, but we're not changing our main goals. And lastly, as we move along, right, we can develop more objective, tangible goals based on the determined needs of the community of the school. And then I just put in this like problem-solving cycle, right, because that's kind of the big part of it. We have the problem, we figured out what's going on, but we're going to have to keep going through this cycle because I'm sure more things are going to come up as we go along. Okay, so the last part of the implementation strategy is, I think, parent empowerment. So how are we going to empower parents once we finally get this communication going? We finally start getting events happening. How are we going to empower parents? So the implementation of a parent-teacher association or parent-teachers organization, the putting parents in the decision-making position, giving them an opportunity to show leadership, and essentially not just talking about like, hey, be here, it's wonderful, and saying that, you need to come to this thing. Actually show them, and give them that power, give them that ability to have an influence, and let them walk the walk, so that way they are vested into it, and it's not just, hey, this is going to be great, I promise. It's like, try it out for yourself, look at it. And then make it fun too. If you can, have some family fun events, plan stuff with your administration, plan stuff with the parents, and how can we increase a joy factor for all? It doesn't always have to be about how are we going to get our test scores up? How are we going to do this? No, it can be fun events that we're building relationships. Again, how can we make these things meaningful? And parent involvement really does matter. So keep those things in mind. All right, so category 3, resolving the issue. All right, so how am I ensuring that we're serving all students? Well, here's a full quote. Ongoing research shows that family engagement in schools improves student achievement, reduces absenteeism, and stores parents' confidence in their children's education. Students with involved parents or other caregivers earn higher grades and test scores, have better social skills, and show improved behavior. This is one of many quotes, and this is, again, ongoing research. This is being shown time and time again that parent involvement is extremely important for the success of a student. All right, so what is the justification based on the case that I was given? Why did I want to go through this type of plan? Well, we clearly need to get the principal on board. We clearly need to make sure that the principal understands the importance of this relationship. There's also clearly some interest. Given the invitation home to parents, what it said, and how it was put forth, it's surprising that anybody showed up. Why were there not 0 people? There's clearly some interest if 8 people are going to show up. Also, the past groups, it'd be great to know what those are, but there's, again, clearly some interest there. And there's clear potential for a school community relationship to happen here. That's what I definitely can see. It just needs cultivation. The principal seems to have a very distorted view. He's saying that this isn't going to happen. Parents aren't involved. They don't want to be a part of the school. They don't want to get involved. Well, that's like saying that nobody wants to go and hang out and have a picnic or hang out in this backyard, but that's because this is before and this is after. If we can make it more desirable, if we can improve that, if we can cultivate what is already there, well, maybe it'll be more desirable and people will want to go. So I think that that's something that we really need to take ownership of. All right, so feelings and unresolved problems. My opinions of the case. I had a lot of fun with this assignment. I think that's because I tend to think pretty metaphorically and archetypally. So what I mean by that is, like take the Lion King, for instance. If we think about the principal kind of being like this complacent king, Mufasa or Scar, and things are falling apart, things are disintegrating, and it's the job of this new person coming in, right, the hero, to come in and fix things up. I think that part of that is making sure that you're letting culture guide you. So you're looking at what is there, how can I utilize this, and like how can I honor these parents, how can I honor the past. Then I think speak truth and build habitable order out of chaos. So what I mean by that is kind of thinking about this idea again, like thinking metaphorically, archetypally, back to that kind of like this hero's journey. We didn't know a whole lot of information, so we need to go into the unknown. We need to figure out what's going on, and we need to go from here, right, this area of order, this area of chaos, and kind of work in between those in order to create this school-community relations. So I had a lot of fun with it, thinking about it in that regard. Kind of keeping on that metaphor, I'm going to go through these unresolved issues. So, is the principal tyrannical? So is he Scar or is he Mufasa? What I mean by that is, well, why were there no PTAs or PTOs, and why did he not want those? What were these previous parent groups? Why did they end? Is there some kind of bad blood there? Why did he call off the meeting when when there was those 8 parents? He was saying, let's just call it off and let's not even talk to him. And then thinking about that, so when you think about those things, you might kind of think he might be kind of a Scar character. He's kind of Maleficent. There's not a lot of good going on there, and you might kind of think badly of him. But could it also be that he's just more of the Mufasa character? He's becoming a little bit complacent. He said that he felt differently when he first became an administrator, so how can we tap into that? And then also, again, like how can we get the principal back to those previous views where he said that he did feel differently? So again, going kind of these metaphors, thinking about the Darth Vader moment at the end, when he finally kills the Emperor, and it's like, cool, it's over, and I've realized why I need to do these things, and like, I found the light again. So I think that that's something that we need to do and figure out, where does this guy stand? All right, I'm going to try to run through these category 5 a little bit faster. So serving all students through school-community relations. Component 1, how did I make sure that I am promoting academic success of students? Again, it is key that we're talking about parent involvement. So we're serving all students. Going back to this quote, if we can get that parent involvement, we can serve all students. The next part is differentiated communication. So I was ensuring that this was happening through making sure that we have like a plan that is going to reach all parents, and doing that through many different means and incentivizing those parents. So that's how we're going to ensure that those things are happening. Okay, so again, that's how we're going to do that. Component 2. How are we making sure that we're promoting personal well-being of all the students while addressing this parent apathy study case? Can't say it enough. Parent involvement is key. Just going back to those quotes, going back to everything that we know, parent involvement is key. That is going to promote the well-being of students. Again, communicating the why to all parties. So I think the key point here is getting teachers involved and communicating the why to them, and making sure that they understand why it's important to have school community relationships, and having that team and being able to delegate these things. I wanted to bring in this quote. So the shift from building managers to learning leaders is backed by research indicated that leadership is second only to teaching among school-based factors in influencing learning. Well, if the most important part is teaching, if that's going to be the part that's going to influence learning, then we should absolutely be bringing teachers into that process and making sure that we have them on our team. All right, last component. How did you as the educational leader promote communities of engagement for families and other stakeholders? So how do we bring in the community as a whole? I think a big part of that is that sociological inventory, learning about the community, figuring out what the parent interests were through those surveys, breaking bread, bringing a community together, and really building kind of like a school family in that regard, and then being connectors. So how can we serve parents? By knowing our community. So really that's how we're kind of tying all these things together, is through that connector piece. All right, so thank you very much. I really did enjoy doing this case study, and I hope you enjoyed my video.